We watched Romancing the Stone yesterday
Mm-hmm.
because that one often comes up in books. We can talk about it, but we can talk about much more as well. But we watched that one specifically yesterday because in a lot of books on story structure, the Romancing the Stone is one of the ones that's used as examples quite a bit. So that's why we were watching it. But do you want to start us off, Brianna? And
Yeah, I actually want to kind of like, before we even talk about the hero's journey, just kind of lay some groundwork and kind of establish the conversation and like why it matters. Or, well, so the thing is, I think there are two different people that I want to speak to. One would be people that are kind of resistant to using story structure, which was me literally like a year ago. So I understand that kind of a person pretty well. And then there's also the kind of person who maybe overthinks about story structure and they get just completely stuck in it. And so I want to like kind of talk about to what extent it is important. For the first thing is that if you're a storyteller and you're trying to use story structures, especially like, say the 3-act structure, or I'm a fan of Michael Hages. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Michael Hages, I don't know. But he has like a 6-part kind of a version of the 3-act structure. There's a bunch of things. There's like this, the Save the Cat story beats. If you're using one of these and you find that it is restricting you or it's like getting in the way of your creative process, I would say you're probably using it wrong. And I think that's why that kind of resistance happens, is because it's like, it's getting in the way of my creative process. All of these things are tools and they're there to make your story better. So if it's not making your story better or it's getting in the way, I would step back a little bit and try to understand the principles more, which is what Heath and I have done. And that's why I think it's really important to talk about the hero's journey, because unlike a lot of these other story structures where you're talking about, 25% of the story XYZ happens and like this like really precise stuff that's like, this hero's journey is extremely intuitive. And it comes from, it's the mostly influential person to talk about this was Joseph Campbell, which I'm reading his book right now. And he was talking about it as like a monomyth, as this idea that like when people write stories, they tend to have these really, the monomyth, that there tends to be these really broad general themes. And when you understand the hero's journey, what you'll find is that, what you'll find, I'm just gonna ignore that, is that you probably already are writing with a structure and you just don't realize it, that like, it is like, it's just kind of like, natural to the human psyche that we tend to write something vaguely like the hero's journey. But studying it can help you like get better. It can help you when you're stuck. It can help you like when you're writing a story and you're like, I don't know what happens at this part of a story. When you know the hero's journey, that's one of the ways to be like, oh, this is what should happen here. And once you understand the hero's journey, it's easier to then go and learn the other structures. At least I found so, because then they will tell you, okay, at what point, if you're writing, say, a screenplay, is it normal in the industry to have this happen, kind of a thing. But all that to say, it's really flexible. It's not like a law. There are a lot of different versions of it and permutations of it. And like you have Joseph Campbell's version. There's the one. What's the author? The writer's journey. What's his name?
This is Christopher Vogler.
Christopher Vogler. Okay, so he simplified it a little bit. So he took. Joseph Campbell basically does the study of all sorts of different world mythologies, and kind of found their similarities. And then that guy, I already forgot his name, Vogler, he figured out, he kind of took those principles and condensed them and made them easier for storytellers to use. There's another version that's even simpler called the story circle. It's basically the same thing, but it's helpful for like a shorter story structure, say for like a 1-hour episode of a TV series or something like that. So anyway, so that's a lot of things just to like, if anyone out there is resistant, to hopefully ease some of that resistance. But then I also want to say the other thing, which is that if you get too caught up just in structure and that's all you think about, you have to recognize that, again, structure is just a tool and it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that you're holding people's attention and that you move them emotionally, right? That's why we come to stories. So just remember that is a tool to help you get there, to help you have a better story that people connect with, but it's not the only tool. So all that to say, let's talk about the hero's journey.
Okay. Well, I guess my two things would be to say that, well, first of all, there's a difference to me between a story structure and a story formula. Some stories will be formulaic. And when I think about something that's formulaic, I think about like a TV show that, hey, every episode, like it's particularly an episodic TV show. You're like, the formula for this TV show is that these things all happen in this TV show, and it can be extremely successful. Like Home Improvement, I'm thinking of. I don't know, Brianna, you might not even know Home Improvement.
No, but I'm thinking of a show I've been watching called Lucifer, which is like that. Every single episode, he always goes to talk to his therapist. Every single episode, they're always solving crime. Like it's the same thing, but it's part
That's
of
a formula.
Yeah, it's a formula.
That is, so to me, that's different from structure. I mean, they're related, I guess, but there's formula. We're not necessarily talking about a formulaic story when we're talking about a structured story.
Yes.
And then the reason really that I got into this in a serious way is because, you know, I've been writing stories and I've been trying to get them out and talk to people about them. And of course, some of my stories got rejected based on what I had written. And so I'm behind on all of that, but I'm plowing forward. And I was specifically told, though,
you're not behind, you're where you are.
I'm where I am. I'm behind where I thought I would be, but I'm where I am, and I'm very happy with the material that is now in development, even though it's behind where I thought I would be at this point. But the situation with the hero's journey, I was specifically told that if you want to have a commercially successful story, you're an unknown writer at this point, trying to get something off the ground. I needed to be told what is it that I needed to produce. And I was specifically told, write a hero's journey story. Don't try to write something experimental, or don't try to write, I wasn't perceiving my stuff as experimental, but don't try to write something experimental. Don't try to write something very different. There'll be time for that later. First, prove that you can write a hero's journey story. Boom, 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 boom. And prove you can do that. Then go on to other things.
I'm so glad you said that, because that was something else that I actually wanted to bring up and I forgot. It's just that is what is expected in the industry, is that you have the ability to write a hero's journey. And so if you're like Heath or like me and you're like trying to break in, like that's the level one. You definitely got to do that. So yeah.
Mark Hyde is for the Joseph Campbell's story. Just plain awesome as a writer's resource indeed. Heck, any type of storyteller. And I you know, I've come to distinguish between books on writing and books on story structure. Because the book's just on writing, like we were just talking about the words, and I haven't ever found those particularly useful. But some of these books on actual story structure like this are extremely valuable, I found. James says stories are how humans relate to one another and share experiences on culture.
Yes.
Well, Trick says that even blockbuster movies are commonly formulaic down to the minutes spent in each part, or structured. Yeah.
Well, see, because I guess it's kind of a fine line between the two. But to me, I wouldn't, just because it's like hitting certain beats at a certain moment doesn't necessarily mean it's formulaic. It seems to me that like when people say formulaic, it's kind of it's in a sense that you know what's going to happen literally, like every time, you know, like a formulaic slasher film, for example. I don't know, like I don't know, I haven't watched slasher films, so maybe that's not a good example for me to talk about. But it's something where, you know, it's very.
You're talking about now he's going to go talk to the therapist.
Right, like that.
That's going to happen.
With structure, you may feel, okay, things are about to get intense right now, because you know at this point that you're familiar with the stories that you watch in films, and you know that there's certain kinds of things that are going to happen, but you still don't know what exactly is going to happen. Like, you know that, you know, the stakes are increasing, but you don't know, okay, how are they going to solve the problem? So that's how you can be structured without being formulaic, is that you're still surprising people, because there's an infinite number of ways to tell a story, an infinite number of stories that can conceivably be told. So it's never going to limit you. It's just going to help you, as long as you're using it right. Yeah.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. That show is also a quintessential formulaic show. I mean, that show was
take your word for it.
Show every single episode.